What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Deborah YouTube channel. We're back. We're talking about 101 value. So what we're going to be looking at is what is the 101 in your Dynasty League going for? People are trading them right now. We kind of dived into it. I crowdsourced a little bit, said, hey, what are some deals they're out seeing? So if you hold the 101, what kind of players can you be looking at? Who are your options out there? We're also going to be going through tiers and actual trades that have happened. So hit that like button. Let's talk about who the options are there. So right now, just based on everything, dynasty rankings, rookie rankings, all of that, pre-combine, Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr. are the only 101 options. They're kind of in a tier to themselves. Now, if you're a diehard Superflex guy and you believe that Caleb Williams is your guy at 101, you have to take the quarterback, then it's only one option, right? But there are instances where I've been getting DMs and questions about the 101. If you're sitting there with two premium quarterbacks, a lot of people have like Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, or Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow. Kyler Murray seems to be that second QB. If you're sitting at the 101, and you need help at the wide receiver position, and the way that wide receivers are getting valued, do you take a shot at Marvin Harrison Jr., right? And I don't think it's as clear-cut as yes or no. I think it's very team-dependent. It's league-dependent as well. So if you're sitting there at the 101 and, you're always going to hear, well, trade back if you don't need a quarterback. Some guys aren't going to trade up for that spot, right? And if you still want to stay within that tier, the 102, you need to make sure he's taking a quarterback. And even then, it's all league dependent. It's very context-wise, right? So that's the way I look at it. Now, as far as where the 101 straight up is being valued at, essentially Anthony Richardson's right there. Anthony Richardson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Herbert, Bijan Robinson, maybe even Brees. They're all getting valued at that 101 swap, right? So the question is, do you want Caleb Williams or Anthony Richardson? Who would you rather have in that instance? Now, I got to ask that question on a Dynasty podcast recently, and I said Anthony Richardson. I think that with his upside, in 2 games that he played full starting games, when you're looking at, I know he only played like basically 4. In week 1, 21.9 fantasy points. He was QB4, 29.6 in week 4, QB2 overall. Like Richardson, we know. I love him in the offense that he's in. I love that they're going to build around him. With Caleb, you don't know that. If he goes to the Bears, what does that offense look like with Waldron? What is that going to go there? So that to me is where I kind of have that cutoff with Anthony Richardson. After that, I think there's some other guys in that range that you probably would rather have Caleb. Now, I do want to also go over the tiers quickly. Right now, this is kind of where we look at, Caleb Marvin tier 103 with Malik, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and Brock Bowers. That tends to be the tier as well, right? Now, some people think Malik is close to Marvin Harrison Jr. It really depends on your prospects and how you're kind of looking at it. To me, it's clearly Marvin Harrison Jr. in a tier. But that 103 to 106, I mean, there's a lot of flexibility in there. Like when you're looking at just where the value's at, where you can move, what kind of picks you can get into. The Jaden Daniels, Drake May debate is going to be going on all offseason until the draft and where we know what they're lined up. But essentially, that's what your first round's starting to look like. After that, though, it gets a little interesting. You could put Rome in that top tier. It's really up to you. To me, Rome is kind of just in a tier to himself at the 107. Then you have Troy Franklin, Brian Thomas Jr., J.J. McCarthy, Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell. There's other guys, Lad McConkey, going to be in there, depending on what you have. I will say this. I do think that, where J.J. goes is going to matter. So if he goes to top 15, like some people are saying, he could maybe move up to 107, 108. You could see definitely that. I do think some of these running backs that get drafted possibly day 2 will sneak themselves into the 111, 112 mark. But essentially where your tiers are, 101 to 102 is your tier. 103 to 106, then 107 is kind of to himself. And then 108 to 112, it's going to come down to capital and where those guys are at. So that's just kind of where the value at with those guys. Now, what is the 101 going for? So just to look at Keep Trade Cut, essentially Marvin Harrison Jr. right now is getting ranked as wide receiver 5 overall. Some have him as high as wide receiver 3. Caleb is QB 9, right? So when you're looking at kind of, where their tiers are at in terms of the options that you possibly could have there, Caleb is getting valued right in between Anthony Richardson and Jordan Love. Now, I would smash Caleb Williams for a Jordan Love deal, but on the other side, I would smash Anthony Richardson. So it's close, right? As far as wide receivers goes, Amon-Ra's ahead of him. Jamar, CeeDee Lamb, and Justin Jefferson. And then Puka Nacua is right behind Marvin Harrison Jr., right? So when you're looking at the deals, so what are some deals? Now, these are all deals in Superflex tied in premium leagues, 12-team, that you could go out there and move for. So 101 for Puka and the 105. Now, if you believe Puka is wide receiver 6 and you believe Marvin Harrison Jr. is wide receiver 5, and you can get the 105 on top of that, where you can still get a Drake May or Jaden Daniels possibly if those guys fell to you, then I understand this deal, right? The whole idea of this is to provide you context of what the 101 is going for right now. Then if you look at this, 101, 201 for Justin Herbert. So essentially, you're sitting there like, hey, Caleb and whatever at the 201 for Justin Herbert. I'm going to re-roll the quarterback. I think Caleb could be a top 6 guy. Next one, Bryce Young, the 101, the 201 for Stroud, Gainwell, and Pittman. So essentially Stroud and Pittman for Bryce Young, possibly Caleb in the 201 there. I like the Stroud side. I think that Stroud has kind of elevated himself high enough. I still like the 201, but to me, CJ Stroud's a top 4 dynasty asset. So he trumpets the 101. Pittman and Bryce Young are pretty fair. 201, I think it depends really what you think of like the back end talent. There could be some wide receivers there, Keon Coleman, Xavier Worthy, possibly if he slips with the running backs there. But I still think I like CJ Stroud in this deal, right? You take the box that do have produced Pittman, wide receiver 1, CJ Stroud, and I mean on his team, right? He could be a low end wide receiver 1 in fantasy. CJ Stroud, top 5 guy already. Now, next deal here, 101, 112 for Trevor Lawrence. Been seeing a lot of Lawrence deals for that 101 range. So if you believe in Lawrence's talent, I still think the 101, 112 is the better value. And if you think Caleb is going to be better than Trevor Lawrence, I would lean there. Derek Carr, 101 for CJ Stroud. Again, smash CJ Stroud in this deal. If you can pivot the 101 to a CJ Stroud, you have to do it. I think that if you need to add a piece, you go out there and grab them. The interesting one, the next one, Brandon Ayuk in the 108 for 101. This deal happened, and I was kind of shocked by it. And then I've been kind of looking around the dynasty space. Brandon Ayuk is kind of valued as a 103 right now, straight up. And if that's the case, then this deal makes a little bit more sense to me, because I think for value perspective, that's how he's going. I still lean to 101 here. Like, I think that 108 is sitting outside that tier, like we talked about. It's like that Troy Franklin tier in that range, depending on if you like him or Brian Thomas or JJ, wherever you're at. And then for Brandon Ayuk, who I like, but I mean, I guess this is assuming he goes and becomes a wide receiver 1 somewhere else, because in San Francisco, I think his ceiling is limited. I love Ayuk. I've been a big Ayuk fan this last year, but we've seen kind of what that ceiling looks like with Brock Purdy, Debo, Kittle, CMC, and those guys there. But even if he does become a wide receiver 1 somewhere else, I think the upside having that 101 with Caleb there is valuable. And I think for some of these receivers that he's going for, I'm leaning the 101 in that deal. And then the next one, the 101, 307 for 105, James Cook, and the 212. Again, this is just assuming, I guess, James Cook can kind of be a running back 2 solid guy there. And then you get a quarterback at 105 or Neighbors or maybe Brock Bowers in tight end premium. But again, I still think I lean 101 in this deal. I think the value is too good to be passed up there. I think you could get more later on for the 101 as it goes. And so that's kind of where I lean. But these are some of the values out there right now for the 101. Now, as far as, would I move the 101 now? Obviously, it always comes down to value or price. If you're kind of playing with house money and you have the 101 because of deals and trades and you're a contender, I don't mind moving it. I think that there is some wiggle room there. I think that you can extract some value before free agency and before the combine and before all that process plays out. If you have the 101 and you're kind of a rebuilding, you just hold it. You wait until as the draft comes, and then you can extract as much value as possible. These things are fluid, though. When these deals are fluid, I would say your dynasty league is probably going to get more active here as it comes into March. So kind of be, fluid with it. But I just want to give you an idea right now of what the 101 looks like, where those tiers are kind of at, and what players are getting valued that you can go get a sure thing like CJ Stroud, or you could possibly bet on the upside of like an Anthony Richardson. So appreciate you guys. I'll check you guys in the next video.